What's going on, guys? Welcome back. And today I'm going to be continuing my series of re-reviewing random movies from the MCU with Iron Man from 2008, and it feels like 1,000 years ago. Uh, sorry, just to quote Tony Stark from the Endgame trailer, but this movie is actually really good. I rewatched it like a few times in the past year. I kind of rewatch it every year usually, and I never actually remembered how good this movie actually was. It felt fresh to me. It like rewatching it on this viewing. Uh, yeah, I'm just re-reviewing random movies from the MCU. Let me know any suggestions you have for any MCU movies you'd like to see me review, like out of the older ones. I want to rewatch like Age of Ultron, and I want to maybe rewatch the other Iron Mans, but let me know. Um, But yeah, this movie feels very different from the rest of the MCU because, as you know, Iron Man, this is the first film in the MCU, so it feels very different, and um, it just has a different tone. Like, the first half is really dark and kind of grim. Like, it starts off, it's like Tony, he's like fooling around. Like, it starts off and it's like it's just fooling around, and then it gets dark after like the explosion happens, and then he wakes up. Or then it just cuts back to like earlier, like 2 days ago, basically, and and then you just see what's been happening and like how his character started, and then he goes through this arc of realizing what he's done and he needs to change it, and it's really interesting, and it's a different tone than the rest of the MCU because it reminds me how, I hate to admit it, but how oversaturated Marvel movies and superhero movies have gotten over the last while. They've gotten extremely oversaturated, because they've kind of become a norm. Like, they're so like we're used to this. Like, every summer we get a big blockbuster fun action movie. Like, it's a different film than that, and I appreciate that because all the other ones are just marketed now as big epic summer blockbusters, and they're movies where you just go and eat popcorn. That's what they're marketed as now. But this movie is very different, and I really appreciate that about it. And it has this really great. I have some notes written down, but what I really appreciated about this film was the way that it subverts your expectations, but not in a way where it's bad. It actually contributes to the story, because it's like, okay, a few examples I have are at the beginning, where Yinsen, his friend, spoilers, obviously, this movie came out 11 years ago, almost 11 years ago at this point, so obviously there will be spoilers, but where Yinsen, the guy who, fixes up his heart and stuff, and he says, oh, he's like, they're kind of getting to know each other, and, like, it tells you, like, they could have easily, I always thought that scene was dragged out, but no, when he's in the cave at the beginning, it's really fast, and it is really cool to rewatch and just see the montages of him like building the suits. Like, he builds the suits in the cave, and it's just like, I just had this huge grin on my face because it's like, man, this is just classic stuff. And at the same time, it doesn't spend too much time on it because it's like, this guy, they could spend like 20 minutes of them just talking about their backstories and stuff. But they just have one line where he's like, "You got a family? Yeah, I'll see them when I get out of here." And then he does. And then he's like, "No, come on, man, you gotta see your family." He's like, "My family's dead." And he's like, "No, it's okay, I want this," and that death, I think, is more impactful than a majority of others in the MCU, like even some of the dustings in Infinity War. It's because they set up your expectations in a certain way, but they are met, but not in the way you expect. It's very smartly done that way, where it's like, oh, you think, oh, he's gonna get out and he's gonna see his family, and then you think, oh, well, he's not gonna make it out, and he doesn't. But the thing is, he actually does get what he wanted. He got to see his family again, and I think that's really interesting, the way that they did that, and that affects Tony in an interesting way as well. And very smartly does it. It's like, also in the middle of the movie when he goes to the dance with Pepper, and they're dancing, and then he just leaves her there on the roof, and then later in the movie, it's like, oh, they're not gonna discuss that, and it's like if you hadn't thought about that, you're like, yeah, wait a second, he did leave her on the roof, and then at the end of the movie, they bring that up, and then she's like, do you mean when we danced and you went to get me a drink and you left me there on the? It's like, it's like, and it's like, if people hadn't thought about that, it's like, wow, you're right, he did leave you there on the roof, but then at the same time, it's like, it makes you think, oh, they're not going to answer that question, but they do. It's like, it's very self-aware. It's like, in any other movie, it would be like this, like, romantic moment, but it's like, no, you left me there on the roof, It's like, and that's another point I want to make, is the movie's funnier than most of the MCU movies, where the new MCU movies, granted, I find a lot of them funny, and I find a lot of the humor funny in the new MCU movies, and the current style of humor in the MCU, but the way they handle the humor in this movie is really funny, and it's like, there's a lot of unexpected funny things. Like, there's some things that are unintentionally funny in terms of line delivery, like, Tony Stark has built this in a cave with a box of scraps. Like, there's a lot of funny line delivery, especially from Jeff Bridges as Obadiah. But it's like, the jokes are really funny. Like, it's just like, it has a style like, where it's like, oh, here's a joke, and then it just cuts, and it's like, he's like, what? How are we gonna explain this to the government? And Tony's like, just say it was a training exercise. He's like, I can't just say that. Due to an unfortunate training exercise. It's like, it's like, there's a lot of funny humor like that, and it's like, the humor's really clever, where a lot of the new MCU movies, they are funny, but the humor is cheap. Like, I don't know what the right word is, but they use a sort of, I guess, a cheap sort of humor. But this movie, it's not cheap humor. Like, it's actually, like, I was like, when I started watching, I was like, oh no, is this movie one of those ones where I rewatch and I find it boring? No, it's really funny, and it keeps you engaged in the story, as well as being very entertaining and funny at the same time. And that's something that I think a lot of the other MCU movies fail at. And the way I judge the MCU is by what movies do I remember and what ones do I forget. And it's like, there's some, like, I want to rewatch Age of Ultron and revise my opinion on it, but it's like, they're the ones where they are so good and memorable, like Infinity War. I remember everything about Infinity War. I remember the first Avengers. I remember, and here's an unpopular opinion. Don't get mad at me when I say this. I don't really like the first Guardians of the Galaxy. I prefer Guardians 2. That's just my personal opinion. Like, I think it's funnier, I think it's more heartfelt, and it's just a lot better than the first one, because the first one, as much as I hate to admit it, every time I watch it, I forget about it in like a week. Like, I forget about most of the stuff. I remember Guardians 2. I remember Spider-Man Homecoming. And I remember all the ones by how good they were. Winter Soldier, Civil War. I remember all the really good ones. Even the first Captain America. I don't remember Iron Man 3. I don't remember Iron Man 2. I don't actually hate Iron Man 2, but there are ones that I like, and I'm entertained by them while I watch them. Like Iron Man 2, Thor 2. I don't even hate Thor 2. I understand that Thor 2, from a script perspective and from a storytelling perspective, is not a very good movie, but I can be entertained by it. With Age of Ultron, I think Age of Ultron is probably a better film, but I just don't find anything in that film entertaining at all, and it's like my least favorite MCU movie, unless I rewatch it and I like it more. But with this movie, it's funny and keeps you engaged, and the characters are interesting, and Tony Stark is just such a great character, and you care about him, and his arc. He has a full arc, and some other movies in the MCU fail at that, where they don't really give their characters a full arc throughout the film. This one does. It gives Tony a full character arc, and I really appreciate that about the film. And I guess I've just been saying so many positives, and I don't really have many negatives to say about the film. Like, the main negative that most people talk about is Obadiah and how he just goes insane, and he just has, like, the giant robot suit, and how that's, like, kind of like a problem with the MCU, and I understand that, but in this movie, it's actually one of the better ones, in my opinion. I feel that the way that the giant out-of-nowhere final battle happens, it's a lot better in terms than other ones. I don't think that Obadiah gets stupid. Like, he's, like, kind of an interesting character, and then, like, in the final battle, he just becomes, like, a brawl. Like, it's really funny to imagine Jeff Bridges in the suit just jumping around, making all these growling noises. Like, if it was just the suit, then fine, but, like, no, he's under there going, brawl. It's really stupid, actually. Like, it gets kind of corny, which I don't really like, because the rest of the movie was very serious, but the main character isn't really. He doesn't really take a lot of stuff seriously, so That felt kind of weird. It just felt like the character got over the top. But the CGI, especially, I want to mention that I think a lot of it is practical. A lot of the suits and the environments are practical, which they look really good. Like, there are a lot of practical explosions and a lot of stuff that just looks really good. And yeah, like all the suits in this movie, like some of them look bad. Like some people bring up the Mark 45 in Age of Ultron looks kind of bad. In this movie, they all look good. Like the Mark 1, that's a classic, and I have the Mark 1 here in front of the camera from the Iron Man Hall of Armor set from Avengers Endgame. And I did want to clarify that people brought up how they didn't like the helmet, and then I was like, no, it's fine. And everyone else was like, no, it's fine. I can understand now, because this helmet, it works fine, and it's one of the better uses still for that helmet. I don't hate it as much as, like, the Wasp, but yeah, it's not accurate at all. It should have had a face mask. It shouldn't have been, like, this one mold. It's not this smooth. It doesn't have these, like, little circles on the sides. Yeah, it's not accurate, guys, so I kind of understand MGF Customs or Michael MGF and other people who have been criticizing it. But I still don't mind it as much as some people do. But yeah, so it's like the final battle, it's still enjoyable, and it keeps the sense of intensity where most other Marvel movies are just like, turn your brain off, big final battle explosion fest. This one, it keeps a level of intensity with Tony hanging from the roof and then also having his suit slowly run out of power. It keeps a level of intensity, and you still are like excited to see what happens. But yeah, I kind of understand the way where it's like he does talk when he's fighting Tony. He talks about how, oh, the company, like he's jealous about Tony he's like mad at Tony because he was in the shadow all his life. And it's like, I understand that part of it, but it's like, you're killing people. Like, you're trying to kill people in a car, and it's like, it's weird, and it's like, it wouldn't bother me if it wasn't like, he talks about the company while he's fighting him, so he still has a clear head, and he has a brain, and he's like, no one's gonna stop me, ah, especially you, and he's saying all these, like, cliche lines, but it's like, and that could work, but at the same time, it's like, he still has a motivation, but at the same time, he's doing something that completely contradicts his motivation, which is killing people when he wants to take over company. That's not gonna help you, you know? And it's like my dad just says, no, he's just insane. He's just gone insane. I can understand that he's gone completely insane, but at the same time, he's still talking about his goal. And you're not going to achieve your goal if you're going to murder people, you know? So that I understand. I can understand that nitpick, but, like, overall, it doesn't bother me. The ending, final battle, like, how it turns into a big fight doesn't really bother me. Especially when it gets fixed up by the end. And then, of course, the post-credit scene, Tony Stark, you think you're the only hero out there. I want to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative. Yeah. And that's still good. That's still great. So yeah, I know this review is probably shorter than others, but I didn't really have a lot to say. Everyone talks about how great this movie was, and I rewatched it like once last year and the year before. Last year I thought it was good, but it wasn't one of the best. This is one of the best in the MCU in my opinion. And some people say it is still the best. It might be. It is really up there, and it is unique. And that's where a lot of the other MCU movies falter, where they're all just very similar, fun action, summer, blockbuster, popcorn movies. This one is... This one was trying something different, and it kicked off something insane, and it feels different. It still feels different and distinct, and it's still a very good film to this day. And I'm going to give it an A. There are nitpicks, and it's more like, I can understand why the final battle could be a flaw with the movie, but it doesn't really ruin the movie for me at all. So, yeah, I'm going to give the movie an A. I can't really give it an A+, like, that would be maybe too high praise. But, it's a great movie, and, it's up there with the best MCU films, rewatching it. So yeah, you guys let me know what you think of Iron Man, the 2008 film, if you've seen it, and what you thought of my review in the comments as well, and I hope you guys have a great day. Take care.